Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our new figure showcase series, where we'll take a quick look at the newest edition of my collection and do a little review and showcase. Today's figure is a 6-scale version of Wenwu by Hot Toys from the Marvel Phase 4 film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And look, say what you will about Marvel and the MCU, and I've watched a ton of streams from fellow collectors and movie streams too where people just weren't fans of Phase 4. And I respect that. Everyone's entitled to their opinions on these. But I do feel like Shang-Chi gets lost in the conversation a little bit. And I seem to remember this release being pretty universally liked. Although I could be wrong, but that's just what I remember. So in preparation for this, I decided to rewatch the movie, and it is so good. I mean, I would definitely position this as a top-tier MCU caliber film. I'm also well aware that a lot of the critical complaints about these Marvel movies, not that I actually agree with critics that often, but one of the complaints always seems to center around the villains in these movies. They're either not memorable or just throwaway characters. But we have gotten some great ones, including Loki, obviously, Vulture, Killmonger, and I would definitely add Wenwu to that list of great villains. He was actually a little bit likable at points, and make no mistake, he was a villain. I mean, our introduction to him takes place centuries in the past as he's on a quest for power and conquering, and he meets his wife on another quest for power, but you still kind of feel for him. And as opposed to other characters with massive motives like bringing about the end of the world, his were very personal, although resulting in some grand consequences. And you also have to say, for the movie, visually, that climactic battle was insane, and the battle specifically between Wenwu and Shang-Chi, just visually so gripping as they essentially fight to control the rings. So that is why I was super excited to get this figure in hand, especially after rewatching that movie and reviewing the Shang-Chi release, which is definitely in the running for one of the top releases of this year. But let's look at Wenwu, and we'll start with the overall package here, which is nicely loaded like Shang-Chi, coming with spare hands, spare forearms, the rings, and then an entire series of effect pieces, similar to what Shang-Chi came with, and then the stand with the flight flex pull. So a lot of pieces which give you a feeling of the variety of display options that could potentially be available here. So now, as is our norm, let's start by taking a closer look at all of these accessories, and we'll look at the hands first. Now, there are some gripping hands for some of the accessories and the rings, but overall, what you're getting here are hands for posing to recreate some martial arts stances and some more unique poses, like even the pointing hand. As is normal with Hot Toys, the detail work on these is pretty good, and that also does include the detail on the gloves, which looks very realistic. So nice accessories overall, and very interesting to get hands that aren't just for grabbing different accessories. Next up, you get the alternate forearms, and they look great. I love that the rings here have that bronze finish with the blue color scheme at the center of the rings, very much in contrast with the brighter bands that came with Shang-Chi. Now, these look great, and I like the fact that Hot Toys thought to give these to us so that we can make the figures look better. Now, with Shang-Chi, I couldn't actually make the swap. It just felt like I was going to break that figure, so fortunately that wasn't the case with Wenwu. Next, you get the 10 rings themselves, only this time again with that blue band at the center of the ring. These are all beautifully painted and detailed again with that bronze finish, and overall it's metallic looking. That works really well. Now, the figure can hold at least one or two at a time, but these are really meant more for the effect pieces, and we'll see that a little bit later. But overall, I like these. Hot Toys definitely did a nice job recreating things. Now, moving on to those effect pieces, we'll start with what I'll call the blast effect ones. Very similar to the ones we got with Shang-Chi. In point of fact, they might be identical in terms of sculpt work, with the only difference being that paint choice and the translucent material choice. Here, the rings continue that cooler blue effect, and the plastic for the effect is a variable blue to clear, going from blue to clear. Again, I thought that was a great aspect of the movie, with Shang-Chi having the warmer colors and Wenwu operating in the cooler spectrum. But nice work here with the almost lightning effects, making the piece feel vibrant and dynamic. Next up, you get these two larger pieces that are also that same clear bluish plastic material, almost like water. I mean, that's really what it felt like, water versus fire. So these look great, and I'm happy to say they are very unique and different from what we got with Shang-Chi. So props to Hot Toys for not just reusing those pieces. And they, again, they look great. And if you look closely, you can see the slots carved in for the rings to be placed. And you can also see the swirl effects, which are meant to be where the figure's arms can slide in to hold them. So overall, very dynamic feeling, although I will say I think the yellow effects do seem to have a little bit more pop and life to them. And finally, you get the final effect piece, which is essentially held by the figure with 2 floating rings, and it's almost like creating a rope with the rest of the rings within. And if you look at the tip, you'll see a magnet. And this piece is meant to be used in conjunction with the Shang-Chi. And I will try to recreate that pose with both figures, but again, great detail work in Paint App. Although my only fear with this piece is that in trying to pose, you might end up breaking something because the connection points do feel a little on the fragile side. So caution is advised. Now, moving on to the figure, let's look at the sculpt, which I think turned out really solid. I mean, this looks like Tony Leung. And I did pick a picture that maybe wasn't the best, but the thing with these sculpts a lot of the time is that they're more calm and serene. And if you look at the person's face, especially in an action movie, there's usually some kind of an expression. But in hand, I'm really impressed with the sculpt here. I do think it all depends on lighting too, and I have to try to improve that a little because I feel like if you shine a light directly on this, like I'm doing, you wash out some of the great detail work and the more subtle paint apps. But it really is an impressive looking sculpt here, and I think it captures Wenwu well. Although again, could benefit from a little expression. Now, looking at the figure itself, the suit actually looks really amazing. There's a ton of detail work here that can get missed due to the darker color selection. The shoulders, for example, have really nice armored pieces that are detailed in a darker blue that looks amazing. And then his suit is actually fabric with some leather-like rubbery details on the chest and arms, creating a nice pattern that mixes well with the patterns on the fabric itself. The belt too, incredible detail work on that belt buckle that has the 10-ring symbol stamped on it. And of course, there's a lot of mixed media here with the rubber pieces hanging beside the fabric tassels, and then the belt itself, which has some light blue rope holding it together. Overall, just a lot of subtle detailing work here that unfortunately, because of the darker color scheme of the figure, seems to get lost a bit. Pants are also nice with the built-in knee pads, and it all culminates in these black combat style boots that have the split cut ankle joint that I'm happy to say is nice and stiff, so it should hold pose as well. Now, overall impressions, I think it's a great figure. It poses extremely well and definitely has presence, although I do think the black and blue color scheme makes it blend into the background a little bit. When looking at Wenwu and Shang-Chi together, the Shang-Chi just stands out, and I think a lot of that is due to the color choices, from the vibrant red shirt to the orange fire effects. It just has a visual flair that Wenwu is unfortunately missing a little bit. But again, it is a great figure, and it does achieve some great martial arts poses, especially with those hand options. Figure also has a nice stability to it, getting some extreme poses without needing the stand. Now, for some reason during posing, unlike Shang-Chi, I didn't find myself doing anything that really required the flight stand, but that's also because the figure looks great without needing all of that. Now, the effect pieces. I definitely like them, and they really bring the figure to life a little bit more, but I did find myself drawn more to the ones that came with the Shang-Chi figure. For example, the long, almost blade-like effect. It looks okay on the figure, but I might just have to position it a little bit differently because at points, I'm not sure it looked that good. The curved effect, though, looks phenomenal. Again, it almost feels like it's that cool versus hot, calm versus higher emotion motif at play here, with the effects just being more calm overall. So that is a story unto itself, which goes well with Wenwu and his centuries of training. Now, the alternate forearms. Unlike the Shang-Chi figure, swapping these out was a breeze, and at no point did I feel like I was at risk of breaking the arms. So I was able to finally try these pieces out, and they look amazing. I like the alternate look, almost like a ready for battle look. And I like that it does add some visual flair to the figure without needing those plastic, dynamic, vibrant pieces. The other nice thing here are those blast effect pieces. On the Shang-Chi, I actually thought they looked a little bit cheap, just the way they fit on the figure. They were loose and they moved around a lot. Here, if you just do the small cap effects, they look great and just give you a little taste of what you can get if you don't want to get too extreme. But the blast effects, the bigger pieces, actually fit in nicely on the arms, and I think actually ended up looking really great here. So while I didn't like them with Shang-Chi, here I do think they serve Wenwu well and just look awesome. So of course, having said that, I do have to talk about that last effect accessory, which is the one that connects to the Shang-Chi one to create that pose scene with the two individuals essentially fighting over the rings. And the piece actually looks really good as a standalone, but even more impressive posed with Shang-Chi. And the magnets connecting the two are actually really strong, which is something I wasn't expecting at all. But they really do look amazing together. But again, my only concern here is the manner in which the figures have to hold the rings. It looks great once you're done, but at the same time, while I was trying to pose these up, I was definitely holding my breath, having just I don't know, trying to get the rings into the hands. I felt like with all the twisting and handling, there was a huge risk of breaking them. But fortunately, that didn't happen. But again, like to reiterate, they do feel a little bit on the delicate side. And just one word of advice, what I did was I actually grabbed the hands and put the hands over the rings first, and then tried to get them into the pegs to hold the position, so that I didn't have to really try to manipulate the base pieces too much. So overall, I'm really happy with this release. Is it as good as Shang-Chi? I think it's pretty comparable, but I do have to give that figure a slight edge, just based on being visually more impressive. But having Wenwu, who is such an interesting villain, and having him turn out this great is just a huge positive. And I'm happy to have him, especially when you consider that Hot Toys already made a second version of the character in his suit with a nice case for the rings that, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get in the States. And frankly, the price on eBay and the secondary market is way too high for me. So again, super happy with that we at least have this version of the figure. And there are just so many ways to display him that I'm still not sure how I'm going to do that. Now, let me know your thoughts on this one and on the line of figures we got from this movie. And as always, thank you for watching. And if you are enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll touch base on the next video.